Welcome to this series on the Navagraha. When we start with the 9 planets, we have to start with the sun. If it wasn't for the sun, no life in the earth will exist. This is the most important planet in a way. I mean, of course, the sun is a star, but in the Navagraha system, it's counted as a planet. Even in the Brahmanda Purana, it says that everything came from the sun. The gods, whether goddesses, celestials, life, everything came from the sun. So the sun is a very, very important part of our spiritual tradition. In the old days, there were a specific group of people who worshipped the sun, and this set of worshippers who followed a tradition where the sun was the main god was called Saura. Even today, in places like Kumbakonam in Tamil Nadu, you'll find small elements of this left over. There'll be temples like Melakadambur or Airavateshwara temple in Dharasuram, or the Sarangapani temple where the front is shaped like a sun god's chariot. Then there is a temple where the sun shines in the Uttarayana and the Dakshinayana, the northern and the southern ascent. And there is Surya temple, of course. Even within the Kumbeshwara temple, there's a separate shrine for the sun. All of these are small indications of how Saura was a very, very important part of worshipping traditions, which unfortunately is not followed so much now, because all the tradition of worshipping the sun as the primary god kind of got incorporated into the worship of Vishnu much later on. In the Puranas, there are two very interesting stories about the sun, and that's what we're going to look at today. And they're amazing because these are at least 2000 years old, if not older, and they pretty much describe the origin of the sun the way a scientist or an astronomer would look at it. So any sun or any star has 5 stages. It has the birth, it is the young star, and the red giant, which is what our sun is now, and then the white dwarf when it ultimately collapses and dies. And it's amazing that when you listen to these two stories, you will see a very, very sharp connection to science. So let's hear the stories. The sun was born to Aditi and Kashyapa. Aditi was very, very sad that she didn't have a child for a long time, and she was absolutely overjoyed finally when she conceived. But her joy turned to gloom when the child was born, because it was born in the shape of an egg, which is not wrong, but it also was lifeless and just a lump. So Aditi was absolutely disappointed and distraught that this child that she had been yearning for was finally born as a fetus in the shape of an egg, but it was inert and it was just a lump. And then, of course, Kashyapa worked his magic and he breathed life into it. Now, if you read the story a little bit more deeper, you will see that that's how a star is born. It's actually born as an inert ball of gas, and then slowly it grows into the star. And when it grows into a star, it generates a lot of energy and light, helter-skelter, and slowly over a time as it matures, it becomes rounder and more definitive, and the brightness gets reduced a little bit. And that's the core of the second story that we're going to look at. So at some point in time, Surya married Sanjana or Sandhya, and Sandhya was very, very upset that the sun's rays were too strong and she couldn't handle it. So she ran away from him, and the sun was very, very upset. He went to his father-in-law, Vishwakarma, and Vishwakarma very gently told the sun that, listen, the problem is my daughter feels that you're too bright and you need to be reduced a little bit. So the Puranas are actually remarkable. Markandeya Purana has a story, and it says that Vishwakarma took 15 parts away from the sun, and those 15 parts of energy were given to the different gods for their weapons. Like Vishnu got the Sudarshan Chakra, and that had the sun's energy. So in a way, the Puranas also talk about how energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred from one to another. And finally, the sun was smaller, it was less bright, and it was more fitting in shape. So literally it talks about how a Tauri star moves from being in that place to a main star, which is a red giant, as the way we see the sun today. So even in the story, again, you hear of how our Puranas talk about the sun's brightness and the heat whittled down, and they also talk to us about how this has been proved scientifically. If you look at this from a philosophic point of view, of course, you can say that the sun, in a way, the story is a metaphor for us to remember that when we go into relationships, whether it's a wife or a husband or whatever, we need to change. We need to become less independent, maybe more interdependent, and more less assertive about many things. And I think that's a story that we learn. And I'm sure if we get into that kind of a mindset, we can get all the radiance, all the vitality, and all the success that we typically associate the sun with.